This is the Knock&Talk show, an Alio first responder veteran podcast, sharing some comic relief from the street.
Hey folks, welcome to the 33rd episode of the Knock&Talk show. I, of course, am your host, Patrick Faulkner, and in this episode, our guest is Ryan Landry. He is a U.S. Army veteran, as well as a current law enforcement officer up in the Great Northeast. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing things like, well, pirates on drugs, the Black Desert boogers, and what it's like to make that left-hand turn in Albuquerque. And also, we are going to be discussing a little more serious topic from Ryan's podcast, Everlasting Veteran. Interested? Of course you are. You're interested. Stay tuned. Check it out right after this.
Legal Squiggles in pursuit, military in Riverside, coming into the city. No vehicle description on a Washington plated car. It's incident 21.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 33rd episode of the Knock&Talk show. I, of course, am your host, Patrick Faulkner, and today we've got Ryan Landry, also known as Luke to some of his small circle of friends. And Luke is a U.S. Army veteran and a 10-year law enforcement, currently in law enforcement up in the northeast area of this great nation. Ryan, not Luke, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we have had quite the time getting this thing together. I appreciate the can-do and stay in the fight mentality that you had with me and getting this going. For those out there in the K&T world, we started off with Restream. That didn't work. We started off with Restream again. That didn't work. We tried Restream a third time. That didn't work. Went to Zoom. Still didn't work. And now Ryan is on his phone. So
hey, we got something.
We got something. That's right. Always stay in the fight. Never give up. So Ryan is as I said, he is a Army veteran and currently in law enforcement and a podcaster, real estate agent, and I think a jack of a lot of different trades. So Ryan, take a couple minutes and just do like a soft introduction elevator speech. Let us get to know who you are, and then we'll dive into the stories.
All right. Yeah. So I've been in real estate for a short amount of time now. I was in the Army for 8 years, mostly with 2nd Cavalry Regiment in Germany, deployed with them to Afghanistan. I've been in law enforcement for 10 years now, and started a podcast, and it's built around helping veterans through my experience, through other veterans' experiences. Mindset is everything. Getting through whatever you're doing, keeping in the right mindset for yourself and others around you is key to success, and that's where the podcast was born. And brought it to what it is now, networking across the country. Actually started networking with other veterans in different countries as well.
Oh, wow.
So the push and the similarities that veterans go through, it doesn't stop just in the United States.
Sure.
And it can relate to policing as well when you're transitioning from any job where you deal with the darkness of the world, and then you have to slide back into the civilian side of things. The world changes while you're serving. It changes around you when you're in the military. It changes around you while you're in policing, and you're dealing with people at their worst moments, right? So starting the podcast was really helping people with that transition, realizing that there are stresses that go along with it that really doesn't even get talked about. Whether you're getting out of the military or retiring from policing, whether you like it or not, the world does change around you without you even knowing it. So
yeah.
But that's where I'm at now, and got it. We're on the 3rd episode. Just me talking to myself.
Okay.
But I do have a bunch of guests, lining up to get on the show, and it's going to be a good guest lineup.
Cool.
People are going to see a side of the war that they didn't even know existed.
All right. And the name of it, I can tell, is Everlasting Veteran?
That's correct.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Have you launched the 3 episodes you've got, or are you waiting to do like a full launch?
Yep. So those 3 episodes are launched.
Okay.
All your mainstreams, it's across 8 different platforms. Your main ones that people listen to, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, it's on there, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and all your little small ones that aren't big names, but people still use them.
Right.
And then I do have my website as well, everlastingveteran.com. And I put those up there as well for, people that don't have the streaming apps that, rather listen to it on their computer or whatnot. And also the website is not just for the podcast. It's helping other veteran businesses and organizations getting their name out there.
Okay.
Centralized area for somebody to be able to go and say, hey, I want to network with veterans. Well, I'll go to everlastingveteran.com and I'll find something in my area.
Oh, okay. So it's not just regionally where you're located, but it's nationally or internationally.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I'm sponsored by Sky Hunter Outfitters. It's a veteran-owned and operated company in Oklahoma.
Brandy.
It's a helicopter hog hunting company.
Yeah, Brandy.
Brandy Rector.
Rector, yes.
Yep. And and then I got like Eagle Eyes Apparel. There's a bunch of different, veteran organizations and businesses that, I've networked with and put it on the site, so people can resource it as well.
Okay.
And that's from Florida to California to Canada now. And I'm slowly starting to reconnect with some of the Australians I served with. I keep in contact with one all the time. But it's a little bit different how things are done in Australia. People don't realize some of the censorship that goes on. They don't have as much freedoms really as far as we do here.
Really?
Yeah.
You would think them as part of the Western culture.
Yeah, it's similar in a sense, but there's a lot of government control that goes on there. A lot of people don't realize. There's not as much freedoms as we do have here in the United States.
Interesting. I did not know that. No, I don't know any Aussies personally, and really the only exposure I have is House Hunters International. So that is interesting. I mean, you think of censorship, you think of China, Russia, some of those third world dictatorships, but not Australia. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's not as bad as you see in like China and countries like that. But there is some of it that does go on. In New Zealand and Australia, they're so close that you have a lot of mix in Australia, living in Australia or New Zealand.
Okay.
And they'll see the outside perspective of it and realize that the government's trying to have that control. And I didn't ever realize it until I talked to some of my buddies that live there. So
wow. Moving to the story. Any of your favorite funny shenanigans? And I'm using shenanigans because we're right after St. Patrick's Day while we're recording, so that word's fresh on the lips. But between your military career and your law enforcement career, you got a favorite funny story you like to tell, just to get started with?
I would say when we were in Afghanistan, we had a guy named Chiquito, we called him, and it was his birthday, and so I was an artillery guy. We had the big cannons.
Pull string go boom.
Yeah, pull string go boom.
Okay.
So I actually posted it on my Facebook recently. A lot of the guys I served with didn't realize I still had the picture. So we decided for his birthday to tape him to the tube, and then call off that a fire mission's coming in. as he's taped to the tube and start elevating the gun. Yeah. So, and we got a big group photo. You know, you got to do stuff like that to build morale.
Oh yeah.
When you're in the suck with people that, you know, are there with you, you know, you got to really build that morale and find different ways.
Now, was he in his skivvies?
While
he was so you didn't do it that bad.
No. He had his full uniform on.
Okay.
But we wrapped his arms, you know, around it, taped him up to we probably went through like, I don't know, 3 or 4 rolls of duct tape. It took a while to get him down, too.
I bet it did. Did he have any hair left on his arms?
Oh, he had long sleeves on. So
okay. All right.
It wasn't too bad.
There's that.
It was our forced group photo with him.
Yes, forced fun, almost like an NWR.
Yeah.
When did you enter basic?
End of 08, going into 09.
Okay. All right.
So I was kind of late to the game. You know, a lot of people left high school, went right into the military. Mm-hmm. You know, I was kind of late in the game. I did a couple years of college up in Vermont, and then you know, I had that sense of I need to do something more. You know, and you know, I remember you know, my grandfather telling me stories of the military, my dad, my stepfather. You know, so I have a long family history of people serving in the military. So I felt like it was just in me to serve. So I, without, obviously I was an adult, but you know, you want to have a blessing from your family of sorts, that's the right decision you're making.
Right.
You know, and at the time, like it wasn't, because, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan were a big thing.
Yeah.
You know, you were guaranteed to deploy, if you signed up, you know, and, you know, it was one of those things where the family, you know, they weren't 100% against it, but, they didn't want to support it because obviously they didn't want me deploying, you know, but that's why I signed up, you know, to do my part.
Right.
You know,
right.
So
as the lineage goes, you know, there's a lot to be said for the family heritage or the, you know, you stepping up, putting the uniform on because of those that were in your family before you that did it. My grandfathers were both in the Army Air Corps. My father was in the Army. I was in the Air Force, and my son is in the Army. He just he was a little late to the game as well. He was 22, I think, 23, just a couple of years ago. So yeah, I can understand that draw to go and do your part. So now, how many times did you go to the sandbox?
Just once.
Just once?
Yeah, whole year. This was before the military decided to make deployments 6 months. So you were doing a full year. Before that, you know, a lot of the rotations were a year, and they would get extended and stuff. But yeah, it was, you know, there was good times, there was bad times. Mm-hmm. You know, it's bonds and memories that you'll never forget. You know, the bonds of, you know, the band of brothers of sorts, that brotherhood that you're never going to forget. And, you know, a lot of times people don't realize how crucial that brotherhood is to staying in the right mindset going through those situations, you know. So, but I ended up getting out because wanted to settle down, you know, with family and everything. At the time, my wife now would come over to Germany. We'd see each other like twice a year when I was in Germany, and you know, so I originally was going to go to 101st Airborne, but the Army decided to do those involuntary separations because they're downsizing. And they said, well, if you don't re-enlist for 3 more years, we could change your ETS date, the date to get out, by 365 days. So they did that and gave me 3 months to figure it out. So even though I had orders to go back stateside to another unit, you know, they changed it 365 days. And that gave me 3 months to get out and figure it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So, and then luckily, I'm one of those people that does, your 10-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
I plan ahead, the what if situations, like, the military saying, all right, see you later.
Yeah.
So I had already been in communication with the hiring guys at my agency for probably about a year already.
Okay.
So it just kind of sped things up of like, hey, I'm actually coming home in 3 months versus a year and 3 months,
Yeah.
And got hired with the department 8 months after being out of active duty. So
the hiring process, about 6 months, 6 to 8 months then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty quick for me. And I was doing the National Guard thing at the same time.
Okay.
All the way up to 2017. So it was a lot, traveling to the National Guard unit. I would go through the academy, stay there during the week, on the weekends, when it was drill weekend, drive to Rhode Island, drill, come back home, go to the academy.
Yeah.
So it was a lot. It was a lot at that time. I had a lot going on. No real time for myself.
Right.
And we spoke before about that transition, right? A lot of guys don't realize that they're going through it, myself included. And I didn't even have a break to slow down. I took one uniform off and put another one on.
Yep.
For me, I tried to, like everybody else, try to have, as much control over what's going on, and when you start losing that and you don't realize why, there's the ramp up to get you transitioned into the military, but there's no, drawdown to transition you out.
No, not much of one.
And it can be applied to policing too.
Yeah.
You go through, decades of service, and, then it's, you're retired and you're home and you don't have to wake up to an alarm clock. What do you do now?
Right.
All those years of dealing with possible terrible situations or people at their lowest moments. Now you're put into a situation where you don't have to deal with that, yeah. And trying to keep that separate as you go throughout your career, so it doesn't affect your family, is harder than people realize.
It is.
And that's how I launched this podcast that I have. I thought there was more that I could do to give back to veterans. It helps me as well, through other transitions in my life, and I enjoy it, and it's something that brings me joy. So I'm going to continue to do it.
Yeah, as you should. We all need that thing, right? So
Yep.
that's how the Knock&Talk show started. I think I told you I was sitting on the back deck with a couple of the older guys that I worked the road with that were kind of my mentors, and we still hang out together. And we were just chewing on the fat, telling old war stories, and we were laughing so hard that our stomachs were hurting because there's a lot of funny things that happen on the road. And in today's environment, and the war on police, it's hard to lose sight of that. It's very, it's easy to lose sight of that. It's hard to hold on to the funny times, because at the end of our shift, we'd have a post-shift roll calls. Like everybody goes back to the precinct. You got to turn in your paperwork, turn in your evidence, sit around. This was back when reports were handwritten. Tell you, kind of date myself a little bit, but you had to wait till the sergeant signed off on your reports. And while everybody's sitting around and the sergeant's reading the reports, dude, can you believe what this guy did today? You're just rehashing the shift.
Yep.
with your partners, your zone buddies or beat partners, and that's the decompression time before you get in the car and you drive home. Like that's that very important time to offload whatever you might have been carrying since the beginning, middle, or right at the end of the shift. And you're right, when you get out and you leave law enforcement, you leave the military, you don't have decompression time. You don't have anybody to share that with. You have a spouse potentially, right? Or maybe a close network, but they don't want to hear some of those stories. They don't need to hear a lot of those stories.
Correct.
But so the Knock&Talk show was born for all those funny stories that we encounter. So thinking back to, I don't know, last week's shift or I don't know if you were working St. Patty's Day or not, but anything that made you chuckle that you think the rest of the K&T network would enjoy hearing?
Well, I work nights. I've worked nights for the last 10 years. So a lot of times I refer to it, you see those TikTok, videos of crackhead on the loose.
Yes.
That's a lot of times what we're dealing with.
Oh yeah.
People that are in altered mental status, that are intoxicated, bar closure, all that kind of stuff. To be honest, like things just start blending together.
Sure.
And it's hard. It's hard sometimes to pinpoint certain situations because, frankly, sometimes you're just trying to get done with the shift and go home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I do have to say that we do have our regulars, of sorts. Most coffee shops have their regulars.
Yep.
Well, policing, we have our regulars.
Frequent flyers is what we call them.
Yeah. Yep. So there's one person that most of the time it gets called in as a irate male, right? And it's a female.
Okay.
Zombie like, because it's that crackhead on the loose, like your TikTok, we get called for, an irate male with a knife, stabbing the door to one of the establishments downtown. And it's just this like pirate dagger, and this person cannot make a complete sentence to save their life. Based on it's unfortunate, what drugs have done to the communities.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes you sit back and you have to chuckle to get through those situations. As the situation could have turned completely different.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's somebody of small stature with a knife or a large stature that a weapon can do harm to you when you're least expecting it. But when everything's all said and done, you sit back and you go, I just encountered a pirate in downtown. They have a dagger. They're they're slurring their words and making mumbling sentences that you can't understand. And I always refer back to that crackhead on the loose, videos they put out, and that's pretty much how we see the community a lot of times, and it's unfortunate, but you have to, like you said, you have to sit back and you have to chuckle about it.
Oh yeah.
Because humor does help.
It does.
And the other side to it is, we always strive for some that feel good feeling, that dopamine dump, striving for something that makes you feel good, and unfortunately a lot of times you have to use these situations to chuckle about because they're just situations that people are never going to see or experience. They're not going to understand that world that you deal with as a police officer, and that's our time to, like you said, decompress and chuckle about it a little bit,
Yeah.
But we deal with pirates and zombies and stuff like that quite often.
So not much has changed from county to county, state to state.
No.
Night shift is the same. I spent 15 years in polyester and Kevlar, and 12 of those years or after dark.
Yep. Go in when the sun's down. Get out when the sun's down.
Yep.
You know,
especially in the winter. Yeah.
Yeah, the winter months, you know, are sometimes the most difficult because, you know, especially when it gets cold up here in the Northeast, less and less people are out, you know, and you know, you're sitting there and, you know, you may see some wildlife and you end up talking to the deer that walks past your cruiser, you know, telling them to use the sidewalk, you know, or use the crosswalk.
What's up, Frank? How you doing?
That's the reality of it, you know, because you know, people don't realize sometimes you're just sitting there and you're like, there is nobody in this town that knows that I'm sitting here right now.
Right.
You know, I am sitting in a cruiser by myself, sometimes twiddling my thumbs, especially in snowstorms and stuff like that. You know, like you get the people that go out in the middle of the snowstorm. I got to get my cigarettes and milk.
Of course.
It's like, you couldn't have done that like before it started.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah,
you knew it was coming.
There's always that one person though.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Down here in the South during the summertime, it'd be quiet sometimes and nothing going on, and I'd get home in the morning and I'd get asked, "So what'd you do last night?" Well, I wrote 3 crickets noise ordinance violations. Because that was all that was happening. You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know how you guys do it up there in the north. 6, 8, 12 inches, feet of snow, minus temperatures, not just like wind chilled minus, but like actual minus temperatures.
Yeah.
Give me 105 degrees and 155 on blacktop pavement on the interstate, sweating.
Yeah.
All day long. I'll take that. I can't stand being cold. I don't know how you guys do it.
Yeah, we lucked out like this year where I'm at. We didn't really get much snow, and for the majority of the time, it's been in the 40s and 50s.
Oh wow!
Which you know, and then you go 2 hours north, you know, and they're getting feet of snow. So it's been a weird winter. We've had our cold days, but not as often as we normally do. But that's New England, you know. Yeah. You just like the job, you walk out the door, you don't know what to expect, and it's probably the best job is being a weather person, a meteorologist up here, because you could be wrong 100% of the time and still have a job.
That's right. I have said that down here all the time.
Yep.
What other profession can you be expected to be wrong?
Right.
Be paid handsomely for that. And then when you're right, you're a hero.
Right.
But when you're wrong, it's status quo. It's okay. Oh, weather's never right.
Yep.
There was a 90s movie with Steve Martin called L.A. Story. I think it was L.A. Story. Anyway, he was a weatherman in L.A., and he would pre-record all of his weather predictions. Oh, it's going to be high of 78 degrees and wind of blah, blah, blah. And it was because it was the same every single, and then one day it rained and he got fired.
Yeah. I don't even turn the weather on anymore. I look at, AccuWeather, the app on my phone, and then
right.
I make a judgment call when I open the door. And I think that's how they predict the weather up here. Yeah, exactly. They're out there with their little fan telling them, and that's just how it goes. New England's unpredictable with the weather sometimes.
Well, they say down here in Atlanta, if you don't like the weather, wait 2 days, it'll change, and that's true. So tonight it's going to be 23 degrees, and Wednesday we're going to be in the 80s.
Yep.
So, yeah, we're I think we're in second winter now. We've already had one. We've had first spring. That was last week. I think we're going to enter into actual spring next week. But we still might have third winter before we start getting into summers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm I plow on the side too as part of my business, and sometimes I look forward to it. make some extra money, and it's something different than pushing around a patrol car.
Yeah.
And, this winter we had the little small storm, maybe about 5 inches. And I'm like, I'm not plowing for 8 hours. Like, I'll do a few driveways. Like we went through an entire winter with mild temperatures, and we're getting to the point in, spring. And, I'm just like, all right, let's just be done. Like, we didn't really have a winter. It's over with. Kind of like COVID, it's like, all right, it's done and over with. Like, let's put it behind us and move on.
Wow. Yeah. There's a whole episode right there for lots of people to get involved in.
Yep. Yeah.
So we had try to compare stories here. We had a regular. It was a deaf lesbian couple that lived in the suburbs, and they enjoyed setting off their home alarm and then running into their S&M basement and hooking themselves up naked so that the responding police officers would find the front door open, which means what? We have to go enter, clear the residence, make sure everything's okay. It was never okay. Never. That old saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Yeah. Full story right there.
That's it. That's an image that I didn't think I was going to have today.
And like you said earlier, most people have no idea what we encounter on a regular basis in a 8, 10, 12-hour shift.
Yep.
And
it's small stories like that we laugh about, and people just are never going to hear about it, and they think, it's like, growing up, you look at old shows and TV series and stuff like that. And, I always get the, everybody thinks we're CSI, and we have this like magical board that, finds the person, and, we can link the DNA, by sliding stuff over on this, clear board.
That's right. Just, no,
yep.
There it is.
Yep.
Eureka.
Yeah. Yep. And, we can just, tap into everybody's phone and, just ping it. I'm like, well, we have to have cause,
Right.
Like, they think it's just a normal course of business, that it's done all the time. It's like, no, people have rights,
Yep. There's this little thing called the Fourth Amendment.
Yes.
You might be aware of it. You may not be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was policing when that show first came out, so everybody wanted everything fingerprinted. They wanted it dusted. I'm like, no, you don't. Yeah. They touched this napkin. You can get fingerprints off that. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. It's not how that works. None of that is correct.
Yeah.
And no, I want you to fingerprint the house. Okay. You asked for it. And I would spread that dust everywhere. And then when I was done with no latent prints of value found, have a good day. And they're like, oh, are you going to clean this up? No. Cleanup's not part of the job. I tried to tell you that, but that's not what you wanted to hear. Yeah, I hated CSI. It was awful.
Yeah, they highlight the print on the show.
Yep.
And put it up on a computer screen. They have the database that, finds the person and automatically pops up with a picture, and their last known location and everything else. There's a lot of people that are so naive. They think that that's how things, work.
Maybe for the CIA or some of those other alphabets, but for us lonely peons, street cops, that's not how that works.
Yeah. Well, even when I was serving in the military, we had what's called the hide system, and we'd use that on deployment. And you could take a person's fingerprint, retinal scan, but there was already a preloaded list on there for wanted terrorists, and it would compare to that. It wasn't It wasn't just like automatically,
pulling out of the sky.
Yeah, pulling out of the sky, telling me when this guy was born and everything else, they didn't understand technology. You have to have a comparable thing, yeah, that system was pretty cool though, doing a retinal scan.
I bet.
And being able to do comparisons and ID people, and they could actually take that back and ID them later. But that was, a lot more work through computer systems and everything else. It wasn't just like boom, like
Right.
you have the information.
Right.
So
yeah, their travel itineraries from the last 15 years. Oh, they were in Belgium and then they went to France and
yep.
yeah. Yeah, you gotta love TV.
Yeah, and even with some of the shows, like we worked side by side with the Australians that had their call sign was Scan Eagle because they ran the unmanned aircraft that would monitor the area, and you see these movies with these unmanned aircrafts, and they depict its capabilities and portray it like somewhat wrong. It's essentially $1 million fixed wing that has a really good camera on it.
Right.
Like your mini drones here, just amplified, 1,000 times. And people think that, it's got the capabilities to, do other stuff that they see in the movies, But,
yeah, like Eagle Eye, that movie
Yeah.
with Shia LaBeouf.
Yep. And some of that is true. A lot of people don't realize like the internet, like we use now, was used by the military 10 years before it got put out to the public.
Oh yeah.
So there are capabilities the military has, and other agencies that have acronyms that won't be released to the public until they have something new and better.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, it's funny. It's funny how all that works, and people have a misrepresentation of what it can actually do. And you get to a scene, and they're like, just ping the phone. I'm like, well, do you have the phone number? No. Well, how am I supposed to ping it? I'm not just gonna go, hey, Verizon, can you ping everybody, like, and let's see if like one of them close by.
If one of them's close by.
Yeah.
Attention small business owners, Facebook group owners, or anyone looking for customized social media graphics or short branded videos. Check out the Faulkner Endeavor Group, our parent company and the sponsor of this episode of Knock&Talk Show. You can find us here at fegroup.io, and we do branded videos for product release, for anything. As well as social media graphics. We also do presentations and promotional ads and really anything in the digital graphics space. And if you mention this video and this episode of the Knock&Talk Show, you'll get 20% off your very first order. That's right, 20%. That's a lot of cheddar. Again, check out the Faulkner Endeavor Group, find us here, and let us know what you think of this episode. Thanks, folks. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next time. TV does help, I think, a little bit. I tell you, look at Star Trek, right? Computer, do this, and the automatic opening doors. That was all dreamed of for TV, and now it's reality. So there is some, I guess, forecasting out of the creative minds of those people making TVs. But pulling a gun out of the river from 10 years ago and pulling a print off of it, that's just silly.
Yeah. We talked about like predictions and all that stuff. The one that's always been spot on is The Simpsons. It's just kind of scary, Some of the stuff that's popped up. I I honestly think the creator of The Simpsons is a time traveler, but
I have seen those short reels on, like the prediction of Donald Trump becoming president and a couple of the other things that The Simpsons had storylines on that became true.
yeah. They even did the one about COVID.
Yep.
Everybody was in a mask, and quarantined and everything else. And, he's a time traveler.
He's got to be.
That's basically it, So we already know he's a time traveler.
The evidence is compelling.
Yes, it is. It is. It certainly is. That's where I'll get all my news from now on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, stay up to date by watching The Simpsons. I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons growing up. When it first came out in the late 80s, Bart Simpson was a rogue child that didn't have discipline and said, "Eat my shorts, man." So my parents didn't let me watch it.
Yeah. Same here. There was a lot of stuff that they came out with that certainly wasn't good for cognitive development for children. That's for sure.
Yeah. Until Bart became the spokesperson for Butterfinger, and then I think I was allowed to start watching it.
Yep. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's crazy, like how sometimes some of that stuff can correlate with what's actually going on. So
Indeed.
they like they say, there's a lot of Hollywood has their hands in more stuff than we know. Whether it's predictions and stuff coming out or military's capabilities and, stuff that's depicted in Hollywood movies, it comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's scary, like, okay, this actually happened, but the movie itself isn't depicted as a real life movie.
Right. Right.
So.
Yeah, and unless you look at the movie Iron Eagle, which was the Air Force's version of Top Gun in the 80s and 90s, that is not what the inside of an F-16 looks like. I know because I worked on F-16s. So it's not all true. And the MiGs in Top Gun are actually T-38s, I think, T-38s, or F-5s. They weren't MiGs, they were F-5s. But anyway, I digress. Enough of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, looking back at basic training, that was a while ago, right? I've had a lot of veterans on the show. Most of them have been Army veterans, and it seems like there's a common thread between all the different branches that there's always something funny that happens in basic training that you just never forget. It's just some scenario, whether it's the drill sergeant smoking somebody or, that was a daily event, hourly event sometimes. But, there was always some kind of funny story. Do you carry one in your back pocket?
Well, there's a couple. I know one that sticks out all the time is day of graduation. We made it.
Okay.
We're going to graduate and go off to AIT advanced training. And the drill sergeants wanted to leave us with one more parting gift. And we were all in our dress uniforms for graduation ceremony. And before we marched out to see our family, went into the smoking sessions. Everybody's pushing the floor down, and it's one of those things that kind of sticks with you. It's like, all right, well, that kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Now I'm sweating. I almost ripped my crotch and my pants from doing flutter kicks, and like we're all dusting each other off because we're all on the ground doing push-ups and flutter kicks and everything else in our dress uniform. And it was one of those, the drill sergeant, I remember them saying, "Hey, we don't have much to give you, but this is what we got."
Congratulations.
Yep, congratulations. And then, of course, we have that smoking session. We go out for graduation, and we're all in formation, and it's drilled in you to not break attention. Mm-hmm. But what do you do when the guy next to you passes out in the Oklahoma heat? Because I went through basic and AIT dead of summer.
Ooh, in Oklahoma.
Yeah. So you had the tornadoes and all that stuff, and that was my first experience with tornado alarms. And I thought to myself, I'm like, my bed is in a area that is completely surrounded by cement. Why are they waking us all up to go down below where now it's open area and debris can come flying in? The logic sometimes just didn't make sense. But that's the Army. Sometimes.
That is, the military in general.
Yeah, the military in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll never forget. We get through our smoking session. We thank our drill sergeant, for ruining our uniforms before graduation. And we go out there and we're at attention, and the dude three people down from me just completely passes out due to the heat, because
locked his knees
up and standing at attention and trying not to waver, and and nobody moved. It was normal. Do we help them? Do we check on them? You're in that scared state of, if I move, I get yelled at.
Right.
Because that's what happened the whole time you're there. Changing your mindset and adapting to the military. It's a culture shock very quickly. And it's designed that way so that the machine runs properly.
Right. Yep.
You have where you don't have order, there's chaos, plain and simple. And with the military is a big machine, and you have to make sure you have order. So that's what basic training is, and snapping people from the civilian world, like we talked about, that transition, the civilian to military, and that's what basic training was designed for.
Right.
And, they don't have that transition coming back out though.
No.
So there's that. They'll transition into another job corps, all that kind of stuff. But, and I do remember in basic training, so we had, it was like a gauntlet of sorts. And they keep you up for 2 days straight. You're sleeping out in the woods. And they end it with a 10-mile ruck march. In between there, they have a live shoot. You climb up the ladder, you low crawl under barbed wire. They're shooting live fire over your head. And at that time, obviously, Iraq and Afghanistan were the main conflicts. So, they have the voices of Hajis, coming over the speakers and, just trying to get you in that mindset of war, and keep pushing through. And I never forget the person behind me. They tell you not to put your head up, one, because there's barbed wire right above you. You're not close enough to any of the live fire. It seems like you are.
Right.
But it's far enough above you that you're not going to get hit by a round. But I remember the guy behind me. We were low crawling, through the sand, and his uniform, you put your bag on the front of you, and his uniform gets caught in the barbed wire and completely slices his blouse down the back. And he keeps going. And I'm like, yeah, I would not want to be tangled up in that. That's for sure.
No. I did 2 short tours, TD-wise, to the desert. One to Bahrain and one to Jordan. Bahrain was cool. We lived in a tent city, but we were on Jordan was, we lived in a tent city in Jordan, but we were on a Jordanian Air Force base. When we went to Bahrain, we were in a tent city, but we were off a base. So our perimeter was set up first by the Marines, who then the Army came in and set up the Constantine wire and took over the patrol because we had both Air Force and Army in this tent city. And this poor kid pulling out that razor wire, Constantine wire, fell into it, and the accordion went. I mean, it took them forever to cut this poor kid out. I mean, I don't know how he survived. To me, it would have been death by a million cuts, right? Because that stuff is awful.
Yeah, it's not like the old school barbed wire. That Constantina wire it's essentially just razor blades.
Right. And it's wrapped in a spiral, so you pull it out and it stretches. But if you let go of it, it's like a slinky.
Yeah.
And he fell in as he let go. And it was awful.
Yeah.
I that's not a funny story. That's one that just sticks in my head. But anyway, so falling out on parade day, graduation day. We went to my son's graduation in South Carolina. It was in January. It was cold, even though it was South Carolina, but it was cold. And front row of his element, I'm an Air Force guy, I'm not sure what anyway, where he was in, the front guy falls out. And the two people beside him grab him, drag him around to the back. Those three people behind them step forward, fill in those ranks, and that just kind of went.
Yep. And
then you see all the hats running back to the back of that rank and file, make sure the poor kid's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, can you imagine being that guy?
Yeah. And then
poor guy.
And everybody, obviously right after that happens, the rumor mill starts. Oh, he's not graduating.
Oh yeah, yeah, because he didn't make it.
He didn't make it. He didn't even last through the ceremony. And but yeah, it was one of those things that it just stuck in my mind. There's a lot of situations throughout my military time, and I talked to a lot of guys I served with, and the common thing that we see is there's so much stuff that blends together, or you go through a lot of situations where your mind just essentially erases it.
Got to make room for the next one.
Yeah. So, but I do remember we're in Afghanistan. So where we ended up being, it was a Dutch-run FOB. Very much smaller. Artillery was never there. We get there, and we have to set up outside of. There's not enough room, for us. And we had to set up outside, from scratch. And the only thing we had separating us and the main road we had a main road for the little village that was there on one side was just that concertina wire. Before we got HESCOs in, and we tried to hire a local with his backhoe to be able to fill them. Mm-hmm. And, obviously in the middle of Afghanistan, you can't just go and grab a part from the hardware store.
No.
So
there's not a no Riley's around the corner.
Yeah. Long story short, they all ended up getting filled by hand. We ended up using, being artillery, we have an ammo truck that has a crane, to pick the pallets of ammo off. So we ended up rigging a HESCO, essentially, almost like a backhoe, but you're still shoveling it into, the HESCO, and then that gets lifted up and dumped in, and establishing comms and, essentially starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Whereas there were some places artillery was already there. We wanted to air assault the guns in because it would get there quicker, and then we could jump on a bird and fly in. But we ended up having to drive, long convoy 2 days to where we're going. And I'll never forget, I had this one gunny, it reminded me of Rocky Balboa from New York. Had that very thick New York accent. He was a former boxer, coincidentally. So he had the mannerisms, the rocking, and everything else. And so I was in the trail vehicle with the first sergeant, supply sergeant, the comms sergeant, and we were rear security. And he was in charge of. He was essentially our GPS. The guy couldn't find his way out of a cardboard box.
Okay.
And here we're going across, Afghanistan, one of the deadliest sections, getting to where we're going. And we get lost, and he takes a wrong turn, and we just parade. It's like a parade going through this little village with the guns. And, the first sergeant's on there yelling at him, and he's clogging up the radio traffic and swearing, and can't really understand what he's saying, because he's got that heavy accent. And, it was definitely an experience.
Should have made that left turn in Albuquerque.
Yeah. He went left instead of left, So, but yeah. So we end up getting where we're going, and like I said, we started from scratch. Constantina wire was our only separation for a while, and even the HESCOs, we'd put the HESCOs up, they weren't even filled yet, and it was essentially, just cover,
right?
Just so they can't see us walking around. We had probably the worst positioning that you could for we only had two guns, two 777s, the largest towed artillery that the military has, the big 155 rounds. And straight ahead is a hillside that the entire village can just go and walk up on top and look down, on us. And probably, I would say, maybe 300 yards away. They could go stand on top of it and just look down on us, see everything that we're doing. So there was a sense of heightened alert all the time.
I bet the pucker factor was like, I don't know, 1,000,000% the whole time.
Yeah. It was a few times when they started kicking field goals with mortars in between us and the SF and ANA post. We were close to an SF unit that was with ANA. They had their own separate little compound near us, and they started kicking mortars in between the two of us, like they're kicking a field goal. And it became comical after a while. It's like they couldn't hit the broadside of the barn.
Thankfully, right?
If they really wanted to, but it was definitely there were times where you would stand there, and it seemed like the clouds were so close because you had the mountains. The mountains. I've never seen mountains bigger in my entire life. Midsummer, there's snow on top. It's 110 degrees down where you're at, and there's snow on top. In the clouds, I got pictures. It looks like you can just reach up and touch them.
Wow.
But the times it was completely clear. We called it moon dust, because it was so dry. When you'd walk around and you'd step, the ground would plume underneath your foot.
Yeah.
So we called it moon dust, which was funny, when you played some pickup football in your downtime. But it wasn't funny, the after effects of blowing your nose and and having these black Martians coming out of your nose, for months on end. Even when you got back, you're like,
yeah,
and
I remember that.
Yeah. So it's affected my breathing ever since, but it's a comical story,
Yeah.
like you never experience anything like that unless you're in it. And I remember we got back to Germany, and I'm blowing Afghanistan dust out of my nose for like 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, you know. But yeah, it was a good time. We had a lot of fun. You know, there was a lot of shenanigans.
Good
down
word.
in the Australians were really good at practical jokes.
Ah.
So on Christmas, they all wore Santa Claus hats rolling out for a mission. One of the guys that was staying back, not rolling out on that mission, had a Rudolph thong and a Santa Claus attached beard with combat boots, and that's it. And he ran around the fob, spreading Christmas joy.
As one should do on Christmas.
Yeah,
in your thong.
Yep. Yeah. So there was a lot of fun to be had. You know, a lot of morale boosters. You know, because other than that, I mean, you ride a mission out, you sleep, you eat, you work out. You know, rinse and repeat the next day, and keep it moving.
Yeah.
You know,
always moving forward.
You know, and during my time, you know, we had maybe 20 guys. You know, those are the faces you've seen for an entire year. You know, so you're somewhat very isolated, and the amenities in which you're used to don't exist. You know, it's a humbling experience to say the least. Looking back on it, you know, and fortunate, you know, to come back, you know, in one piece, you know, and it's something that, you know, I tell people I'd do it all over again. It made me who I am. You know, good, bad, ugly. It's an adventure of sorts that I would never wanted to have played out differently, you know. So I'm working on trying to get over this head cold right now.
You're doing a spectacular job.
Yeah. Oh, that's New England for you, you know. So I went down a couple weeks ago to Florida, network with some people, and I had a convention. You know, that I went to, and beautiful 80-degree weather, and come back to 30-degree weather.
Welcome home.
And a head cold.
Yeah. Welcome home.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, Ryan, you've got a lot going on professionally, podcast, real estate. You've also got some other things going on. Why don't you tell us, take this time, this is yours, to plug, promote all of your stuff you've got going on. Yeah,
so, you know, I've always been a helper, you know, and I've been told that as well, you know, especially with the veteran community. It really started spearheading actually from policing. You know, I went to a call for a guy around my age, veteran. He was in Iraq in the beginning, the first push. And so long story short, with him, he came back with a lot of problems he didn't know how to work through. You know, and with that situation, I relied on guys I knew. Doc Powers, one of the medics that I served with, started Broken Wings Foundation, and I ended up flying this gentleman out to go get help. You know, it's one of those above and beyond policing. It's past policing. It's being a human. It's being a veteran. You know, and I didn't think twice about it. You know, I knew that if something didn't change, he was going to make the choice himself.
Right.
And that's, you know, that was a few years back. This was probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I'm dealing with my own stuff, transition in the military. We talked about that earlier. Leaving my problems outside of work to deal with other people's problems. And that really was the spearhead, the start of the direction I started going in with helping other veterans. But I first had to be in the right mindset myself. Mm-hmm. You know, I had to start changing stuff in my life, my personal life, to be effective and help other veterans. So going through the process, I started getting my realtor's license, and luckily I was in a better mindset than I was years prior. From February to February, a couple years back, we had 5 losses in our family. Still going through getting my realtor's license, I still was pushing for more. And every single day I felt like I wanted to quit. I'm done. I'm not meant to get my realtor's license. I'm not meant to do extra stuff outside of work. Life is really beating me down, but I kept pushing through, and I'm glad I did, because my first deal as a real estate agent was a veteran. And I talk about this in my podcast, and this is where the podcast kind of started getting created, is how do I start pushing out my experiences to help other veterans, and I thought, all right, podcast, website. I'm on my 3rd build of my website, and that's something that my business does as well, as build websites. I said to myself, I've been through, just like anybody else, I've been through stuff in policing, with the military, being a veteran, working through my own problems. How do I bring it into one sphere where maybe I can just connect with another veteran? And Everlasting Veteran, the podcast, was born. And I also have everlastingveteran.com. You can go there. I have other veteran organizations and businesses that I put up there. Guardians of the Purple Heart in this area really was another turning point for me, bringing back that brotherhood. That cohesive unit was built again, and they're a nonprofit organization that helps veterans locally. And then I started thinking, well, there is a disconnect from active duty to the civilian world. There's a disconnect between the VA and its veterans.
Right.
How do I start to connect, make that bridge, right? I understand I'm only one person, but, I think big picture, and like I explained before, there's that transition into the military, but there's not that transition out. Yeah, they help you get a job and everything. But this is the mindset of the transition stress that has nothing to do with that adrenaline filled, deployment, or, even in policing, those adrenaline filled moments, has nothing to do with that. And I said to myself, I need to start connecting with the right people to see if I can truly start making effective changes for the veteran community. And I actually had people reaching out to me, to come on my show, go down and meet people. Retired colonel that runs the VA now. Go to a veteran conference. There was a lot that was created just by putting this podcast out and putting that mission out. And it's been already rewarding for the amount of people that have been pouring in, of saying, hey, I want to share my story. Hey, I want to, So, I look at it and I said, I'm only one person, but the veteran community, just like the policing community should be, we work better together.
Yeah.
And, Guardians of the Purple Heart, Irreverent Warriors, Silky Hike. I'm sure you've probably seen them through many different states, doing the hikes, building that camaraderie, and everything else. And that's great. But once that's done and over and everybody goes back to their house, reality sets in again.
Right.
So there needs to be an effective change to better the transition, from the military to civilian world as a veteran. And that's essentially my mission with Everlasting Veteran.
I'll put this back up here one more time.
Yeah, pushing that forward. I wanted to come up with, just the logo alone. It's just a set of headphones. Sometimes you just need to listen. and be receptive to others around you in their insight. And, that's why I want to be able to bring other veterans on to be able to do that, and, if it helps one veteran, then we'll go on and we'll help another one.
Cool. That's, can you hear that clicking? And it started when
there's a little bit of clicking.
Yeah, it started when I put this QR code. So quickly, folks, take a picture of the QR code, and I'm going to hide it so the clicking stops. There. I think that makes it go away.
Yeah, it was just to touch real quick on the podcast. We talked about Brandy Rector and Sky Hunter Outfitters down in Oklahoma. They're sponsoring Everlasting Veteran Helicopter Hog Hunting Company. And people just look at it as a business endeavor that she's doing, but they have to look at, that area, Texas, Oklahoma, hogs can be a huge nuisance to the community, farmers, everything else. So what Brandy's doing with Sky Hunter Outfitters and helping the community and helping veterans and first responders goes more and farther than just being a hog hunt, and I was fortunate enough that, she decided to sponsor the first season of Everlasting Veteran. And, I'm super appreciative of it. And it comes full circle. My basic training in AIT was in Oklahoma.
There you go.
Still, and she's a veteran. I'm a veteran. And it's for a good cause, pushing each other and building the veteran community and pushing that forward. So, but, and then you got Eagle Eyes Apparel down in Florida, my brother-in-law that's got the veteran owned and operated T-shirt company.
Okay.
And he immediately jumped on and said, I'll give you the code EverVet15. Anybody can get 15% off their entire order, now to December 1st.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The big thing with that is he partnered with Survive First. You can go to survivefirst.us. It is a nonprofit organization that helps first responders through any mental health issues that them and their family are dealing with. And the person that started that actually is directly connected to the families in which they help. It's not just this, huge organization that you donate to and you never see a face. They are directly connected. They even fly out and directly go to the family and help them in their time of need. So again, another great organization and business that have partnered together that are supporting Everlasting Veteran.
That's awesome.
And that's what it's all about is building the community, making it stronger, pushing the mission forward, and with the Knock&Talk show, having the jokes, having the laughs, you got to have that humor, and everything's not all serious all the time. You can't keep it like that.
Can't, no. I think you've got an amazing mission. I'm thankful to have you on the show to be able to do my part to help spread the word in my very small community. But like you said, the law enforcement community needs to band together more like the military community. Most of us come out of there. It's not a foreign concept to us, but it out of sight, out of mind. Like I've been out of law enforcement now since 2014, and I still have friends that if I picked up the phone, we could have a conversation. But there's the brotherhood portion of that is disconnected, and until something happens, something typically bad, like now I have to go to a funeral, one of our fallen brothers or sisters, and then you reconnect for a couple of minutes, and then so it's not the same as it is with our veteran community, and it should be. So I thank you for starting this, not only just in law enforcement and the military, but for those people that want to help and don't know how. Putting it all in one place it's great. So
and it's a lot. it's a lot of work, but when you're doing something that you love and you know is going to, be pushed forward, and even after my time, on this earth, somebody else is going to pick up the torch,
Sure.
And like I said, I'm just one person, and coming on this show, and I've had people reach out to me, even the Gulf War guys, of getting a new insight into what the veteran community is dealing with. We share more similarities than we realize. Even with the Gulf War guys, and there's a lot more similarities than we realize, like I said. And a lot of people don't realize, like, I have the thin blue line flag behind me. You have the thin red and green, and the thin red line, a little history, actually was the redcoats that held the line back in the Civil War days. And that was originally the thin red line was for the military. And it sparked and turned into blue for police, red for fire, green for military. But the symbology behind it, a lot of people don't really truly understand what it means. And it, like you said, it shouldn't take a singular harsh incident to draw everybody together.
Yeah.
And the symbology of that thin line, whatever color you represent, and in my case, it's blue and green, policing and military. You have to really sit down and think, what's your purpose? What do you bring to the table to help other people? And like the first season of Everlasting Veteran is all about mindset, being the best version of yourself for you first, and then be able to be the best version for others around you, because self-awareness is a huge thing, and you may inspire somebody when you don't even know it. Yeah. And,
that's true.
And when you're the best version of yourself, people see it. People see when you're the worst, so I'm not a perfect person. I don't claim to be, and I've had my wrongdoings and stuff that, I look back and, failures and everything else, but you grow from it. And, like you said, there needs to be more of a collective effort in law enforcement community, to bring that brotherhood, the sisterhood back. And I think we've allowed outside things to affect and control, that brotherhood.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
So, I have a thing called Control-Alt-Delete, and that's one of my first episodes. Right? You can't control things you can't control, but, you have to control yourself, and then you alter your mindset, and then you start deleting the negativity. And once you start doing that, then you slowly can start being the best version of yourself.
I like that.
And it's a tidbit thing that I didn't come up with it. I picked it up along the way, and like I tell people, I'm not the smartest person to be able to come up with stuff like that, but I'll use it.
Yeah.
And I'll promote it,
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. It's a simple thing. Control-Alt-Delete. How many times your computer is not working, you hit Control-Alt-Delete, go to the task manager to shut the program down, and reset. You got to do that for your life too sometimes.
I love that.
Yeah.
So,
but I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we can, I'll get you on my show. And,
absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah.
You just let me know when. Maybe we won't have the technical issues. Ryan, thank you. Thanks
this time you're going to be on your phone.
Yeah. There we go. That'll work. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and spending almost an hour troubleshooting to get us to be able to have the conversation, and then spending right at an hour with me and talking about the stories, both funny and serious. And that's okay. It can't always be a jokester, but you can't always be serious. So, folks, this has been the 33rd episode of the Knock and Talk show with our new friend Ryan, not Luke. Check out his podcast. I'm going to throw this up one more time so you can see it. I don't know where that clicking is coming from, but that's super annoying. Everlasting Veteran, scan that code, jump over to the website, and see where it is that you can help out and help further the mission. Folks, until next time, stay safe, and we'll catch you later.
The Knock&Talk Show is a certified veteran-hosted podcast. Show your support, tune in, share, and subscribe.